This one, Dogs by Nature, ahead of the free NFL Scouting Combine, which will be underway next week about this time. Browns wide receiver free agency targets by category. This one, Dogs by Nature. Unrealistic dream target, they go with Mike Evans, 17 games, 79 receptions, 1,255 yards, 13 touchdowns. Realistic target, they say Calvin Ridley, stats last year, 17 games, 76 receptions, just over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. Okay target, Marquise Brown, 14 games, 51 receptions, 574 yards, 4 touchdowns. No thanks. They say Gabe Davis, 17 games, 45 receptions, 745 and 7. Hear me out target, Mike Williams. Williams could find himself being cut due to his cap hit with Los Angeles, the Chargers, freeing up $20 million in cap space. If he gets cut, the Browns should reach out. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Tim, you look at those. Who intrigues you from that group?
I think Calvin Ridley really intrigues me because, he came off that full year-long suspension that he had for gambling. And, coming back and obviously had a very productive season, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns last season with Jacksonville. Those are good numbers, and obviously he's the number one guy, as the main guy in that offense, especially not playing for a while, to put up that kind of productivity is really promising. And if the Browns were able to sign him, you bring him over to Cleveland. There's obviously the Alabama connection with Amari Cooper. Obviously, they weren't together at Alabama, but there's probably a little camaraderie there, a little, chemistry that can be formed off that. And I think Ridley's got the chance, even if he's not like an elite number one, maybe a low number one. I think he is a very high level number 2. And I think you put him alongside Amari Cooper and you could really make something happen. Then when you look at the rest of the guys, Mike Williams becomes so interesting to me because, he's coming off a torn ACL. Obviously, he would be kind of a cap casualty for a Chargers team that really needs to shed a lot of salary, just get under the cap before the league year opens. He'd be interesting because of the Deshaun Watson connection, because it seems like based on his time with Houston and what he was able to do with DeAndre Hopkins, he does well with taller receivers. So maybe there's something to build on with Mike Williams, especially if you can get him on a value deal. Evans would be interesting because, again, getting close to 30, but that feels like pie in the sky unless you were willing to take a discount to play for a team that's got a shot to win a Super Bowl.
What about Gabe Davis? That's a guy that has some connections to Ken Dorsey, the new offensive coordinator. I don't know that he's necessarily a number 2, but he seems to show up big in big games.
Yeah, and the AFC North is full of big games. All the first division, I believe, ever, especially since the expansion, the separation into the 8 divisions they have now, that all 4 teams have winning records. So, every division game's a big game, and we all saw what Gabe Davis did in that one playoff game against the Chiefs, just a couple of years ago. It'd be interesting to see what he would do with a larger role. Obviously, if he came to Cleveland, he wouldn't be a number 1 guy. Maybe he looks for an opportunity to, kind of show that maybe he should be a number 1 guy somewhere. I'm kind of fascinated where he goes and what kind of money he gets. It's gonna be very interesting because he obviously has a pedigree. He's shown he could play at a good level, and in some ways, he fits some of what the Browns might be looking for at receiver. But I think it just kind of comes down to money and how much. Like, what kind of influence would Ken Dorsey have in trying to add another veteran receiver to this offense? And if he was going to have influence, how hard would he be pushing for Gabe Davis?